If you haven't seen my first couple of videos, give them a peek. These videos are for those that would like to know how to play fantasy football. I couldn't find, maybe they're out there, I don't know, I didn't look that hard, but I didn't see any videos or any series of videos that explain to you how to play this game. So my other two videos up to this point, give them a view if you haven't seen them. A reminder that, again, I do not work for ESPN, and I'm not compensated in any way from them. This is just a site I like to use, and I believe is easy for me to show you how to play this game. So again, you can play for free fantasy football, ESPN.com. Picking up from my previous video, being logged in, going to the fantasy football page, and this San Francisco head-to-head points league. So I was discussing how it is you play this game, and I was at the scoreboard and I was explaining to you that this is my team and this is Team Johnson. Again, I don't know who that is. This is my roster and this is their roster. Now, here where it says points, it's not, you don't get points when your teams score necessarily. It's not like if Dallas scores a touchdown, then everybody on your Dallas roster gets 7 points. It doesn't work like that. This is, well, let me show you. Going back to league and going to settings, it should bring up the scoring settings. And here they are. And these are what you would call, and what ESPN calls, ESPN standard scoring. If you just join, if you just want to be in a league and you don't want to, if you want to create a league and you don't want to set points and you don't want to set all this stuff manually, these are the default settings for ESPN. You can see that there are 6 categories: passing, rushing, receiving, miscellaneous, kicking, special teams / defense. That roster that I had previously, all the players on that roster can score points in most of these categories. At the end of the week, everybody on my roster will have accumulated stats, and points are awarded based on those stats. Tony Romo was my quarterback, and quarterbacks do most of the passing. Not all of it, but most of it. So if Tony Romo threw for 200 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions, I would receive, for Tony Romo, 8 fantasy points. You receive 1 fantasy point for every 25 yards passing. Most of those passing yards come from the quarterback position. Now, running backs throw the ball every once in a while. Wide receivers throw the ball every once in a while. Tight ends throw the ball every once in a while. If those players pass the ball, you get passing fantasy points for that. If whoever throws the ball throws an interception, you lose 2 fantasy points. If whoever throws the ball and completes a touchdown pass, you're awarded 4 fantasy points for that passing touchdown. If the team scoring a touchdown goes for a 2-point conversion, and the guy that throws the 2-point conversion is on your fantasy team, in your active roster, in your starting lineup, you score 2 fantasy points. So, 25 yards per passing, 4 points, 25 yards per point. So 1 point for every 25 passing yards, 4 points for every touchdown pass, 2 points for every 2-point conversion converted successfully, and -2 points for interceptions thrown. So, you don't really need to remember that. You will eventually. So let's go back to the scoreboard. So again, if Tony Romo throws for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns and an interception, so 250 yards, he gets 10 points for that. Then he gets 4 points for each touchdown he throws. That's 12 points plus the 10, so that's 22 points. But if he throws an interception, he loses 2 points. So Tony Romo's fantasy point total passing for that week would be 20 points. Let me go back to settings. Because Tony Romo can score points in other ways. Quarterbacks rush the ball all the time. Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, Robert Griffin III. All those guys, rushing is a strong part of their game. So you get points for your quarterback when they rush the ball. And every once in a while, you'll see a trick play where a quarterback catches a pass. You get receiving points for that player. So take Tony Romo's stats and say he rushes for 11 yards during that game. He gets 1.1 fantasy points. That's called fractional scoring, where if you get 1 point for every 10 yards rushing, that's the same as 0.1 points for every yard rushed. So 7 yards rushing is 0.7 points. 22 yards rushing is 2.2 points. And if Tony Romo rushes for a touchdown, he gets 6 points. Tony Romo catches a touchdown pass somehow, he gets 6 fantasy points. Rushing, receiving is the same idea. Running backs rush, wide receivers rush, quarterbacks rush. Receiving, wide receivers receive, tight ends receive, quarterbacks receive. 1 point for every 10 receiving yards. 1 point for every 10 rushing yards. If you rush for a 2-point conversion, 2 points. If you receive a 2-point conversion, 2 points. Rushing touchdowns are worth 6. Touchdown receptions are worth 6. And again, quarterbacks can get points for passing, rushing, and receiving. Running backs the same. Wide receivers the same. Tight ends the same. Just because a player is not a running back doesn't mean that you can't get rushing yards and rushing points for that player. So, where it says miscellaneous and kicking and defense, special teams, first I'm going to do the kicking because that's the easiest. If your kicker, because you will draft a kicker and have a kicker on your team, if your kicker makes an extra point, you get a fantasy point for that. If he kicks a field goal between 0 and 39 yards, that's here, he gets 3 points. If he misses any field goal, it's minus a point. If he makes a field goal from 40 to 49 yards, it's 4 points. If he kicks a 50-plus yarder, it's 50 points. Or, I'm sorry, 5 points. 5 fantasy points for your kicker. You will play an entire team for defense and special teams. So if I have the Patriots defense and the Patriots defense gets a sack, my Patriots defense scores 1 fantasy point. If they intercept the ball and take it back for a touchdown, you get 6 points. And you can go through and read all these. In the next video, I'll go over this because this is a little more complicated with points allowed and yards allowed. But again, the simpler ones. If New England receives a punt and they run it back for a touchdown, and I have New England's defense and special teams, I get 6 points. Block kicks, block point after tries, block field goals, interceptions, safeties. All those big defensive plays score points. And also here where it says miscellaneous, you'll have wide receivers, running backs. All your players can do any of these strange things, and you do get fantasy points for that. Let me wrap up this video.